a dark fantasy romance written by Rosie. The Riverview High Library smelled of old paper. Among the mythology shelves, Sage had found her sanctuary, a corner where the filtered light from the tall windows cast just enough shadow to hide anyone who wished to disappear. She drew with the precision of someone who had spent years studying anatomy, not in biology class, but through old bestiaries and books of legends. The wolf on the page took shape beneath her fingers, eyes fierce, posture predatory. Fenrir, the devourer of worlds. There was something about Norse mythology she found comforting. The door opened with a soft creak. Sage didn't need to look up to know who it was. The air always seemed to shift when Ethan Morrison walked into a room. He crossed the library, a blue-covered book tucked under his arm, heading straight for the counter where Mrs. Garcia sorted cards with the methodical efficiency of someone who'd devoted 30 years to the Dewey Decimal System. 3 days late, Mr. Morrison. Practice, he said, setting the book down with a dull thud. Coach is obsessed with the state championship. Sage watched through the curtain of hair that fell across her face. She studied the way he smiled, the restless glance around the room as he waited for Mrs. Garcia to finish checking the book in. The way his fingers tapped once, twice, against the scratched wooden counter. An irregular rhythm, anxiety disguised as casual impatience. Then he turned and left, and the library became just a library again. The bell rang a moment later. Sage shelved her mythology book and left her refuge. The hallway buzzed between classes. She navigated it the way she always did, keeping to the edges, invisible not by magic, but by practiced intent. The cafeteria was worse because the lines there were clearer, the territories more defined. You could map the school's entire social structure just by where everyone sat. Ethan, of course, was at the center, surrounded by Tyler Bradford and the rest of the team, by Madison and her friends, with perfectly brushed hair and flawless makeup. They were laughing about something, an inside joke probably, the kind of shared moment that marked who belonged and who didn't. The collision happened suddenly. Shoulder against shoulder, Coke flying in an almost graceful arc before splattering across Tyler, one of Ethan's friends, his shirt now stained. The silence that followed was absolute.
Seriously? Tyler stared down at his shirt, then at her, disbelief mixing with something darker. You just ruined a $300 piece of clothing.
Someone laughed, a sharp, glass-cutting sound, and Ethan turned. His eyes met hers for the first time. Really met them, not just glanced in her direction. For one infinitesimal moment, the world consisted only of that look, completely unreadable. Then reality returned. The heat of humiliation crawling up her neck, the weight of dozens of eyes, the sound of more laughter beginning to echo. Sage mumbled an apology and left. She didn't run, running would be worse, an admission of defeat, but walked fast, each step deliberate, until she pushed through the double doors and into the hallway, where at least she could breathe. The tears came only when she reached the second-floor girls' bathroom, the least used one, where no one would see her. Humiliated and ashamed, she let them fall in silence, leaning against the cold sink, staring at her reflection in the spotted mirror. Chapter 1. At the far end of Maple Street, a Victorian house sagged under the weight of years. 3 generations of women lived there, grandmother, mother, daughter, in a strange harmony built on shared secrets and old blood. Her family had a reputation in town. 3 generations of women in that same Victorian house, growing strange herbs, keeping even stranger books. Witches, some whispered. Her family never confirmed or denied it. Sage climbed the porch steps, past her mother watering violets by the kitchen window, and went upstairs to her room. She closed the door, locked it, then, finally, let the weight of the day crush her. She didn't cry anymore. She'd run out of tears in the school bathroom. What remained was heavier, darker, anger mixed with shame, desire twisted into resentment. The cafeteria scene replayed in her mind like a cruel loop. But worse than the public humiliation was that single moment when Ethan had turned and seen her, really seen her. That eternal second where his eyes locked with hers and witnessed her complete social downfall. Now he'd see her as that weird, clumsy girl, the freak who spilled drinks and ran off crying. Any microscopic chance she thought she'd had evaporated right there. Her vanity table was an accidental altar to frustrated adolescence. Makeup she rarely used, perfume no one ever smelled, and among the bottles and brushes, 2 objects that didn't belong. A folded but visible flyer for the midnight ball. The dance was that very night. Halloween, masks, the promise of temporary anonymity. She had planned to go, not because she liked parties, but because Ethan would be there. One last attempt to be noticed before the year ended and he graduated, never knowing she existed. But now, after today, the idea of stepping into that gym and facing all those eyes that had witnessed her humiliation seemed impossible. Next to the flyer lay the grimoire. The book was old, not centuries, but old enough for its pages to have yellowed edges, most of the handwriting belonging to her great-grandmother. Practical spells mostly, protection, healing, and others less practical, less ethical. Sage opened to the marked page, one she'd visited before during idle fantasies, never believing she'd actually consider. Compulsory Affection Enchantment. The title was blunt, no romantic euphemisms. Magic didn't lie about what it was. Below, in smaller, more careful handwriting, forced love is not love, it is imprisonment. The enchanted one becomes a shadow of themselves, an empty reflection of the conjurer's desires. Sage ignored it and reached for the school yearbook. Ethan Morrison smiled in his photo, that easy grin that revealed nothing. Hair perfectly tousled, eyes fixed on the camera. She tore the page carefully. The sound of paper ripping was satisfying. The ceramic bowl was in the back of the cupboard, along with other tools her grandmother insisted she learn to use. Knowledge is different from practice, the old woman always said, but ignorance is dangerous. Sage placed Ethan's picture in the bowl. Dried rose petals, coarse salt, for protection, theoretically. But tonight, it stood for something more bitter. Tears, anger, everything she hadn't been allowed to show. She struck the match. The flame licked the photo's edge, catching slowly, then faster. The paper curled, blackened. Ethan's printed smile melted, warped.
Ethan and Sage,
She whispered, her voice raw.
Ethan and Sage, Ethan and Sage.
The smoke didn't rise straight up. It coiled, twisted, forming patterns that looked almost deliberate. The ceiling light flickered 3 times before steadying. Sage stared at the ashes in the bowl, feeling something settle deep in her stomach. Not regret, not yet, but the foreboding sense that she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. It was done. Chapter 2. The school gym was unrecognizable. Black fabric hung from the ceiling, creating the illusion of a night sky, with false stars glimmering from tiny LED lights. Candles, fake ones too, safety regulations, cast flickering shadows on the walls. The theme was Gothic romance, an aesthetic that sounded better in theory than in practice, but the committee had clearly done their best. Sage stood alone in the middle of the crowd, the red cloak she'd chosen, the only thing in her closet that seemed remotely appropriate, hung heavy over her shoulders. She'd arrived early, when the gym was still half empty, and watched as the space filled slowly with couples, groups, people who belonged. Ethan wasn't there. She searched for 40 minutes, trying to look casual as she scanned every corner, every group of athletes laughing near the punch table, every couple dancing under the rotating lights. Nothing. Then Max, who was in charge of the music, put on something slow and melancholy. The lights dimmed. A spotlight swept across the dance floor, catching couples as they swayed, faces pressed to shoulders, hands finding familiar places on waists and backs. Sage stayed on the edge, watching. Always watching. That was when she realized what she'd been avoiding all night. The spell hadn't worked. Of course it hadn't. Magic wasn't reliable. Her grandmother had warned her countless times. It depended on intent, timing, energetic compatibility. She had probably misread something, used the wrong amount of salt, mispronounced a word. Or maybe, and this thought hurt the most, there wasn't enough magic in the world to make Ethan Morrison look at her the way she wanted him to. Then, at midnight, the doors opened. He stepped in, backlit by the full moon, and for a second Sage thought she was hallucinating. The figure in the doorway wore a wolf mask, his eyes glinting beneath the artificial light. The music kept playing, but the chatter died. Heads turned. The boy in the wolf mask walked across the gym with measured, deliberate steps. He didn't glance around, didn't hesitate. He was walking straight toward her, and Sage felt her heart stop, restart, race. He stopped right in front of her. Close enough for her to see the texture of the faux fur, the tiny cracks in the painted resin. The entire gym was watching. Sage lifted trembling fingers to the edge of the mask. For a second, she thought about leaving it on, preserving the mystery. But she'd already crossed too many lines, broken too many rules. The mask came off. Ethan Morrison looked at her with eyes that weren't his anymore. There was recognition, yes, but also something else. A fixation that pierced through her, consumed her. His eyes didn't blink, didn't waver. They were locked on her with an intensity that made every cell in her body scream a primal warning. He smiled. Not the easy grin she'd memorized, but something sharper. Seductive. Sage. His voice was low, meant only for her. I've been looking for you. He held out his hand. She took it, because not doing so would have been stranger, and he pulled her onto the dance floor. Ethan spun her, and his hands found her waist. Firm, possessive. Fingers pressing through the fabric with a pressure that bordered on discomfort. They danced, and it was everything she'd imagined. Their bodies moved in perfect sync, because he left her no choice, guiding her with an intensity that allowed no hesitation. He pulled her closer, and she could feel his heartbeat against her chest. Too fast, too strong, like that of an animal. You look beautiful. The words came out dazed, reverent. Ethan, He kissed her before she could finish. Technically perfect. The right angle, the right pressure. Beautiful, practiced, and completely wrong. When he pulled back, his gaze stayed locked on hers, glassy and unblinking, and Sage felt ice crawl down her spine. What had she done? Around them, the other students stared, expressions shifting between surprise and confusion. Madison Parker stood by the punch table, mouth open, clutching a red plastic cup like a shield. Tyler Bradford whispered something to his friend, both of them wearing that universal, "What the hell is going on?" Look. Ethan ignored them all. His friends, his teammates, the girls who always competed for his attention. None of it existed anymore, except for Sage. He didn't let go of her waist for the rest of the night. Didn't let her go to the bathroom alone, waiting just outside the door with unnatural patience. Didn't let her talk to anyone, positioning himself between her and anyone who approached. And his eyes never, not once, left her. Sage was terrified. This wasn't real love. It was like being trapped in a lucid dream where you got exactly what you thought you wanted, only to realize the desire itself was poisoned at the root. "I have to go," she finally managed, pulling away from his grip. "My mom's waiting. I'll drive you." "No!" It came out louder than she meant. She took a breath, softened her voice. "You don't have to." "She's already on her way," Ethan frowned, and for a split second, Sage saw something flicker behind those empty eyes. Some fragment of the person he used to be, struggling to resurface. Then it vanished, replaced by that fixed, possessive stare. Sage left before he could stop her, before the weight of his gaze and her guilt crushed her completely. She pushed through the gym doors into the cold night air, filling her lungs with oxygen that didn't smell like him, and felt the first hot tears start to fall. She'd gotten what she wanted, and it terrified her. Chapter 3. The days that followed were a slow descent into her own private hell. Ethan was always there, waiting by her locker in the morning, holding books she hadn't asked him to carry. Sitting beside her at lunch, ignoring the confused looks from his friends, answering them in monosyllables when Tyler or anyone tried to talk. Walking next to her between classes, so close their shoulders brushed, his hand always finding her back, her elbow, her waist. People whispered. Of course they did. Madison Parker shot looks sharp enough to cut glass. Ethan's friends made increasingly uncomfortable jokes about him being under a spell. The irony was so bitter, Sage almost laughed, but she couldn't find humor in any of it. Because Ethan wasn't Ethan anymore. He smiled at the right times, said the right things, but it all felt hollow. His laughs came a second too late. His eyes never followed conversations. They only followed her. On the fourth night after the dance, Sage woke from a nightmare, breathless, trembling. She'd dreamed of Ethan as a puppet, invisible strings tied to his wrists and ankles, forcing him into jerky, unnatural movements. He tried to speak, but the words came out wrong, scripted, as if someone else were using his voice. And when she looked down, the strings were attached to her own hands. She pulled, tried to cut them, but they were fused into her skin. Panicking, she got out of bed. The grimoire lay open on her vanity, the marked page still visible. She'd read and reread the warning so many times she could recite it by heart. The enchanted one becomes a shadow of themselves. an empty reflection of the conjurer's desires. Shadow, reflection, empty. That was exactly what Ethan had become. There were instructions to undo the spell, buried at the end of the chapter, written in smaller, hurried handwriting, as if her great-grandmother had added them after learning the hard way. The process was simple. Burn the remaining ingredients. Destroy the focus. In her case, the ashes of the photo. Simple, direct, irreversible. Sage got to work immediately. She found the ceramic bowl, still dusted with ash, gathered the leftover petals, now even more wilted, and the salt, damp from the air. She wrote their names again, Ethan and Sage, then scratched them out until the paper tore. She burned everything. The smoke rose straight this time. No twisting, no patterns. Just ordinary smoke from ordinary things burning. The lights didn't flicker. Sage let the tears fall as she watched it all turn to ash. She didn't cry for losing him. She'd never really had him. She cried for what she'd allowed herself to become. Someone who had stripped another person of their will, just to feel wanted. "I'm sorry," she whispered, to the empty room, to the ashes, to the universe. "I return you. I release you. Be yourself again." She said it 3 times, as the grimoire instructed, then poured the remaining ashes out the window, watching them scatter into the night wind. It was done. The next morning, Ethan wasn't waiting by her locker. He was at the end of the hall, laughing at something Tyler said, leaning against the lockers in that easy way she hadn't seen in days.
No way, I missed it.
When his eyes found
Tell me
hers,
everything.
they registered recognition, but only faintly, before moving on, uninterested, detached. Normal, completely normal. Relief and loss hit her at once, dizzying. Sage closed her locker and started walking. Not toward him, toward class, toward her life, toward whatever came after the mess she'd created. "Sage!" The voice froze her in place. She turned slowly. Ethan stood a few meters away. Alone now, Tyler had gone to his own class. He looked different. Calm, but genuinely so. His eyes clear. None of that dead intensity. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, stepping closer, and she had to stop herself from stepping back. "I remember some things from the dance, after. Not everything, but pieces." Sage's heart stumbled. She should deny it, laugh, pretend none of it happened. Instead, she stayed silent. Ethan took another step. "There's something I need to tell you." "Ethan, you don't—" He pulled something from his backpack. A withered flower. The boutonniere he'd worn to the dance, now brown and dry. He held it between them, like an offering, or evidence. "Let me finish," he said softly. His voice wasn't controlling this time. It was asking, not demanding. The hallway was empty now. Everyone else was in class. Only the 2 of them remained in the growing quiet.
Chapter 4, Ethan. It was the summer before senior year. July, specifically. One of those suffocating days when asphalt melts and everyone searches for shade. We were moving. Again. 3rd time in 5 years because of my dad's job. I was tired of starting over, of being the new kid, of building temporary friendships that never lasted. The moving truck blocked half the street. Men carried boxes. My dad barked orders about where to put what. Total chaos. And then I saw her, on the porch of the house next door, completely oblivious to the noise. A girl was drawing, hair falling across her face, body bent over a sketchbook, fingers moving in quick, precise strokes. She didn't look up once, not when my dad yelled instructions, not when the truck beeped backing up, not even when my mom waved, trying to be neighborly. Nothing existed for her except what she was creating. My mom muttered something about how rude kids were these days, but I couldn't stop watching. There was something hypnotic about the way she disappeared into her own world, as if she'd found a portal to somewhere else. I wanted to know what she was drawing. What could hold her attention so completely that the universe itself stopped mattering? School started 3 weeks later. I saw her in the hallway on the first day, recognized her instantly, moving like she wanted to take up as little space as possible. She clutched the sketchbook to her chest, like a shield. I thought about introducing myself, mentioning we were neighbors, but she vanished before I could gather the courage, swallowed by the flood of students. Then I started noticing patterns. Thursday afternoons, she was always in the library, always in the same corner near the mythology section, drawing with that absolute focus I already knew. Tyler dragged me onto the football team. Madison, and the popular crowd absorbed me easily, because that's what happens when you check the right boxes. Height, looks, athletic ability. I slid into the role without resistance. It was easier than fighting it. But on Thursdays, I'd find any excuse to go to the library, pretend to study, pretend to need references, return books that weren't even late, just to have a reason to be there. And I'd watch. She drew wolves, mostly. Perfect anatomy, movement captured in graphite. There was something wild in those drawings, something that didn't match the quiet girl who made them. Every Thursday I promised myself, today I'll talk to her. I'll ask about her drawings. I'll find out her name. But I never did. Instead, I sat across the library, pretending to read about the Civil War, while memorizing the way she bit the corner of her lip when she was deep in concentration. I hated what happened in the cafeteria. I saw everything. The way she moved through the space, nervous, eyes down, trying to disappear. Tyler standing without looking. The collision. The coke exploding across his shirt. The horror on her face when she realized what she'd done. Tyler shouted. Of course he did. He was always dramatic. The entire cafeteria turned to look. And Sage looked at me. For a second, our eyes met. I saw everything there. Shame. Pain. I stood. Took 2 steps toward her, thinking maybe I could. Tyler grabbed my arm. What are you doing? Madison laughed. Leave her. She's so weird she probably didn't even notice. And I stopped. Let Tyler pull me back. Let the group convince me it wasn't my problem, that she probably didn't want help anyway. I sat down and watched her run out of the cafeteria, tears in her eyes. I tried to make up for it, went to the library, hoping to see her again, hoping for another chance to introduce myself, to start over. But she never came back. Then came the dance. I wasn't planning to go. I'd turned Madison down 3 times when she hinted we should go together. I didn't want to spend the night pretending to have fun with people who didn't really know me, but something changed that afternoon. A strange pull. Irresistible. I had to go to the dance. I had to find someone. I didn't know who. I just knew it was urgent, vital, impossible to ignore. The moment I stepped into the gym, the first person I saw was her, Sage, standing alone in the crowd, wearing that red cloak, looking around with growing defeat. And something inside me woke up. I walked toward her with this artificial clarity, like I was watching from outside my own body. I danced with her, kissed her, said things that didn't feel like mine, but somehow were. And through all of it, a small part of me, the part still conscious, still me, knew something was wrong.
In the hallway, Ethan finished speaking. Sage stood before him, tears in her eyes, the wilted flower in her hand.
I don't know what happened to me that night, he said, running a hand through his hair, confused but sincere. It was like I was on autopilot. When I came to, it felt like waking up from sleepwalking, days missing, memories blurred, and this terrible certainty that I'd completely freaked out the only girl I ever actually liked.
He took a step closer.
And I never had the guts to talk to you because... He laughed softly without humor. I thought you'd never look at someone like me. You were different. You lived in your own world. I didn't know how to enter it. So, do you want to try again? No weirdness this time, just us?
Sage looked at his outstretched hand, at the boy who didn't fully understand what she'd done, but who was choosing to stay anyway, at the chance she didn't deserve, but he was offering all the same. Slowly, hesitantly, she took his hand.
Of course,
she whispered. Ethan's smile was small, but full of relief. He pulled her gently closer. The kiss began tentative, light as a question, and gradually it found courage. His hands were firm on her face, but tender. And for the first time, what existed between them was alive and real. I'm so glad you joined me for this Halloween special. Working on this story was such a joy. I spent a lot of time on the visuals and the little details, and giving Ethan his own voice was something I'd really wanted to try. It felt like a really interesting way to bring a new layer to the story. I'm curious to know what you thought of that part. When I was putting it all together, I wanted it to feel really immersive, almost like you could step inside their world for a little while. So I ended up making the background music myself. It felt like a little experiment that turned out really fun. I'd love to hear what you thought about it all. Thank you for spending this Halloween with me. I hope it added a little extra magic and fun to your day, and I can't wait to share more stories with you soon. Until next time.